I think that it must have come from my mum in some ways, because I didn't know anyone that owned their own business. Where I come from, everyone worked a job and you worked for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And jobs were seen as exactly that. There was no career, there was no vocation, there was no like purposeful doing of what you do. It's like you get up, you went to work, you probably found it miserable and you try to get out of there as quickly as you could. And for me, I really thought that, there has to be a better way to live. I was like, shouldn't there be some excitement and enjoyment? But I don't know where I got it from. The sense of value and the sense of ambition has always been in me. And people always say to me, like, how did you get to where you are? And I go, well, it's much more simple than people think. It's like, I really value myself and I really value my goals. And I don't think it's much more complicated than that. But I was taught that by my mum, who was very, very much like, listen, Emma, you're not better than anybody else, but nor is anyone better than you. Mm. And so when people talk about imposter syndrome, like I look around, I'm like, that's just made up. Like we all feel exactly the same, like deep, deep down. And that sense of me feeling like I could achieve was just built in. Like I've never felt a lack of confidence. I've never felt less than. I always felt like if I worked hard enough and I really like put everything into it, that I could achieve. I still feel like that today. I don't expect things to be easy, but I've never had a sense of I couldn't. The two things are really important, right? Because I grew up with such a respect for everybody else around me, regardless of like where they come from or, what they were doing. And I think that, as a kid, I was surrounded by a lot of people that were doing what they had to do to get through the day. And I never looked down on anyone. I always thought, well, you know what, as long as you are doing something, you find an interest in something. And for me, that came at a very early age in fashion. But it was much more a means of escapism than me sitting there and like really appreciating the clothing or the craft. It was like, it was a means to dream. I have worked every job imaginable. I had a paper round when I was 12 until I was 15. I worked in a delicatessen. I worked in clothes shops. I served in restaurants. It's like I've done every job in fashion that you could do at the lowest possible level imaginable while not being paid, right? It's like I've done all of it. But actually for me, when you talk about people and your point of view on life, like I am a naturally positive disposition. I always am a person that thinks about the glass being half full. And so even when I worked in that deli and I was making a sandwich, I was going to make you the best turkey sandwich you've ever had in your life. And I would wait and look at you and be like, how good is that sandwich? Isn't that an amazing sandwich? I chose the best amount of turkey with the right amount of the pickle, and I'd make it look nice and I'd cut it beautifully like on the plate. And do you know what I mean? So for me, I can take pride in anything. And I also take a huge amount of learnings from everything. So for me, it's like, I used to think, well, one day, like this will be useful to me. Like one day learning how to make a perfect cappuccino or making a customer happy or discussing how things work in a shop or a delicatessen will be useful to me. And I actually think about all of those experiences as being very formative. And I enjoyed all of them. It's like I've really worked. And I think everybody talks so much about hard work, but they don't really talk about like unenjoyable work. I had a lot of unenjoyable jobs that I just had to get through, but I never ever let it put me off. I always saw them as a means to the end, you know? And so I think when we talk about that now, like what does hard work actually means? It means getting up and thinking about the end goal when you're nowhere even close to it, right? But you can see a pathway. And for me, it was always about that. I could always see very clearly that I'm going to do that to get to that, to get to that. And I've been quite planned, I feel, in so many ways in my life.